For those of us who carry on with our lives in reality, there is one part of reasoning made only for us. It's called Stoicism. It's a way of thinking intended to make us stronger, more joyful, more ethical, and more shrewd, and therefore better individuals, better guardians, and better experts. Empathy has been a consistent theme, however, a portion of history's extraordinary pioneers. It has been drilled by kings, presidents, specialists, journalists, and business people. Frederick the Great, Montaigne, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, Theodore Roosevelt, General James Mattis, just to give some examples, were completely impacted by Stoic way of thinking. So what is Stoicism? Who are the Stoics? How might you be a Stoic? We answer every one of your inquiries in this video. But to the eager searchers of shrewdness, Stoicism is either obscure or misconstrued. To the normal individual, this lively, activity-situated, and outlook-changing method of living has gone shorthand for aloofness. Given the way that the simple notice of reasoning makes generally apprehensive or exhausted, aloof way of thinking on a superficial level seems like the exact opposite thing anybody would need to find out about. Not to mention desperately require over the span of day-by-day life. Be that as it may, it's intriguing. It is elusive, a word that managed a more prominent shamefulness on account of the English language than emotionless. In its legitimate spot, Stoicism is an apparatus in the quest for self-dominance, constancy, and intelligence, something one uses to carry on with an extraordinary life, instead of some recondite field of scholarly request. Surely, a significant number of history's extraordinary personalities not just comprehended Stoicism for what it really is, they searched it out. George Washington, Walt Whitman, Frederick the Great, Eugene de Lacroix, Adam Smith, Immanuel Kant, Thomas Jefferson, Matthew Arnold, Ambrose Bierce, Theodore Roosevelt, William Alexander Percy, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Each read, contemplated, cited, or appreciated the Stoics. The antiquated Stoics themselves were no sluggards. The names you experience on this site in our everyday male reflections: Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca had a place with separately, a Roman sovereign, a previous slave who wanted to turn into a powerful instructor and companion of the ruler Hadrian, and a well-known dramatist and political guide. What have all these and incalculable other incredible people found inside Stoicism that others missed? A lot. Principally, that it gives truly necessary quality, insight, and endurance for the entirety of life's difficulties. In summation, Stoicism was an old school of reasoning that showed a specific method of living. Its chief center was the way to carry on with a temperate life, to expand bliss and decrease negative feelings. Its worth has been attempted and tried over quite a bit of mankind's history by famous people like. Basically, Stoicism was intended to assist individuals with carrying on with their most ideal lives. It's a way of thinking of life that amplifies positive feelings, decreases negative feelings, and encourages people to sharpen their ideals of character. At any second, in any circumstance, and at any phase of life, Stoicism gives a system to living great. It helps individuals to remember what is genuinely significant, giving viable procedures to get a greater amount of what is important. Around 300 for BC, a trader named Zeno was wrecked on an exchanging journey. He lost almost everything. Advancing toward Athens, he was acquainted with reasoning by the Cynic logician Crates and the Megarian thinker Stilpo, which transformed him. As Zeno later kidded, "I made a prosperous journey when I endured wreck." He would later move to what in particular got known as the Stoipoikile, actually signifying painted yard. Erected in the 5th century BC, its vestiges are obvious still. Somewhere in the range of 2,500 years after the fact, the painted patio is the place Zeno and his devotees assembled for conversation. While his devotees were initially called Zenonians, it is a definitive credit to Zeno's modesty that the philosophical school he established, not at all like essentially every school and religion previously or since, didn't conclusively convey his name. It's imperative to remember how contrastingly individuals thought at that point. Individuals' essential concern was to abstain from carrying on with a shocking life. In this manner, they were bound to arrange their contemplations, choices, and practices to advance expanded life fulfillment. One of the most significant things to remember is people didn't naturally accept that they would accomplish satisfaction by achieving money, glory, as well as lovely things. With extraordinary earnestness, individuals needed to see how they could have a phenomenal soul. Apathy was one of the acclaimed ways of thinking during this period on the grounds that the Stoics gave convincing responses to tension, stress, dread, and disturbing inquiries like what do I deeply desire. The Stoics offered a working framework that managed the preliminaries of the human condition. What makes Stoicism? I need to say something regarding this in light of the fact that, tragically, the substance of the way of thinking is misconstrued by many individuals. There are a ton of deluding articles online that add to the disarray. Ordinarily, this is somewhat of a specialized issue that requires some persistence in grappling with Old Greek. Nonetheless, I figure it can conceivably be disentangled and communicated in plain English. At any rate, I figure we can say something that is not very deceptive and sufficient to begin. Apathy is essentially a philosophical perspective with a particular arrangement of moral qualities. These qualities are the premise of an entire scope of mental practices intended to assist us with thriving and, simultaneously, become all the more genuinely tough and less effortlessly resentful about occasions throughout everyday life. Stoics accept that the main genuinely beneficial thing is the thing that they call ethicalness, by which they truly mean such a pragmatic or good astuteness. At the end of the day, our character matters more than everything else throughout everyday life. That is on the grounds that it's at last down to us how we decide to react to circumstances throughout everyday life, though we don't have unlimited authority over the occasions that happen to come upon us. Life is what you think about it. The objective of life isn't delight, notoriety, or riches in light of the fact that these are mostly in the possession of destiny. Or maybe it's tied in with having the astuteness and quality of character to manage whatever destiny sends us, regardless of whether it's torment or delight, notoriety or judgment, riches or destitution. As we've seen, Stoics remember that our qualities don't live out there in reality, however, are extended onto occasions like a light emission and lining an article. On the off chance that we take a gander at the world through rose-colored glasses, everything may appear to be unique. Then if we take a gander at occasions through a glass hazily, maybe through bleak blue focal points, one way Stoics attempt to help themselves to remember this is by depicting occasions to themselves in exceptionally target language, evading any solid worth decisions or emotive way of talking. You can think about this as preparing yourself to be more obvious reality or rational about occasions. Napoleon supposedly said that a seat is just a seat canvassed in velvet. At the point when the most wonderful wine in the realm was set before Marcus Aurelius, he'd quietly mutter to himself that, in the last investigation, it's just a container of aged grape juice, nothing worth getting amped up for. At the point when you're confronted with an upsetting circumstance, it tends to be especially useful to see it thusly. All things considered, set aside effort to depict the occasions to yourself as precisely and equitably as could be expected under the circumstances. In the event that it helps, envision you're a researcher archiving occasions that you're watching transpiring else. Try not to transform a misfortune into a dramatization by pausing dramatically. Try not to disclose to yourself that it's awful. At the end of the day, simply uncover out the realities and start searching for practical arrangements. The world that brought forth Stoicism was a parochial, frequently xenophobic spot. A great many people held quick to age-old divisions of identity, religion, and status. In the event that transparently grasping those divisions sounds abnormal to us, we have Stoicism to thank. It was maybe the main Western way of thinking to lecture general fraternity. Epictetus said that every one of us is our very own resident land. However, additionally an individual from the incredible city of divine beings and men. The Roman sovereign Marcus Aurelius, history's most popular Stoic, reminded himself day by day to cherish the world as much as he adored his local city. On the off chance that the way to bliss is truly in our own wills, at that point even the greatest social partitions begin to look trifling. The Roman Stoic Seneca lived in a general public based on bondage. However, he likewise encouraged his kindred Romans to recollect that he whom you call your slave sprang from a similar stock, is grinned upon by similar skies, and on equivalent footing with yourself inhales, lives, and passes on. This grasp cosmopolitanism, a word developed by Stoics, which actually implies world city-made Stoicism, the ideal way of thinking for the Roman Empire, which brought a phenomenal scope of races and religions into contact. Apathy seemed well and good for a globalized world. It actually does. Stoicism teaches United States that, before we tend to try and management events, We have to management ourselves first. Our tries to exert influence on the planet are subject to chance, disappointment, and failure, but management of the self is the only kind which will succeed 100% of the time. From Emperor Roman Emperor, leaders have found that a stoic angle earns them respect within the face of failure, and guards against vanity within the face of success. Stoicism has a charm for anyone who faces uncertainty, that is, for all of us. However, leaders are particularly subject to risk and flux. Thus, it's not stunning that a lot of them notice a stoic attitude crucial to their mental health. We tend to mention Barack Obama's stoic trait above, and there's some additional evidence for it in his recent interview with Michael Lewis. I'm trying to pair selections, he told Lewis. I don't wish to form decisions about what I'm feeding or wearing. As a result of I even have several different selections to make. You ought to routinize yourself. You can't be browsing the day distracted by trivia. No matter your opinion of Obama's politics. That's classic Stoicism, trying to draw lines between the essential and therefore the inessential at every level of life. Of course, Stoicism doesn't guarantee results. Each of Bill Clinton's favorite books was Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and he's no one's plan of a Stoic. Cato the Younger signed to the present philosophy from his young adulthood to his death. However, he was conjointly susceptible to violent outbursts of anger, obstinate pride, and occasional drunkenness. Yet in his most gritty moments, when he moon-faced down the military of national leader and sure defeat while not blinking, Cato lived out the Stoic ideal. The Stoics instructed that we tend to fail much more typically than we succeed. That to be human is to be fearful, selfish, and angry much more typically than we like. But they conjointly instructed a practical thanks to be more. We don't have the luxury of postponing our training. As a result of the competition, we have a tendency to participate in each day. Life has already begun. Life is correct now. Thus it's regarding time to start out our training. The coaching in philosophy. This coaching in a way to live well doesn't cause a risk, however it offers a colossal chance. There's no risk and far to gain. It ought to extremely be a no-brainer for several people to adopt a philosophy of life that gives guidance, direction, and a bigger aspiring to life. While not that compass, there's a danger that despite all our intended actions we'll run in circles, chase worthless things. Associated, find yourself living a fulfilling life choked with emotional suffering, regrets, and frustration. And since it doesn't take much effort to administer Stoicism and opportunity as your guiding philosophy of life, there's extremely nothing to lose and far to gain. In short, Stoicism not solely shows you the method, however conjointly hands you the key to the great life. All you wish to do is walk the path, flip the key, and enter. I believe we are able to all become a little wiser and happier by act of this excellent philosophy. It's time to dive in. Today, if you enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel,